The boardroom was tense the following day as the shareholders convened to address the incident. Richard Hansen, calm and collected as ever, sat at the head of the table, his red Make America Great Again cap placed neatly in front of him. The board members shifted uneasily in their chairs, glancing at each other as they awaited his account. "Let's get straight to it," Richard began, his voice steady. "What happened yesterday wasn't just an insult to me. It was a failure of this bank's core values." He pulled out a tablet and played one of the viral videos circulating online. The footage showed Eric Carter's dismissive behavior, his insults, and the moment he called security to eject Richard. Gasps rippled through the room as the video ended. "This is unacceptable," Richard said, looking around the table. "If this can happen to someone like me, a major shareholder, what's stopping it from happening to any other client?" James Albright, the bank's director, nodded gravely. "Richard's right. This isn't just an isolated incident. It's a reflection of a deeper problem, and we need to fix it." Eric Carter, seated at the far end of the table, squirmed under the collective glare of the room. "It was a misunderstanding," he muttered, his voice barely audible. "A misunderstanding?" Richard repeated, raising an eyebrow. "No, it was prejudice, plain and simple." The decision was unanimous. Eric Carter was immediately terminated for his unprofessional conduct, and the bank pledged to overhaul its policies. Later that day, the bank released a public statement apologizing to Richard and committing to changes in its practices. They introduced new policies emphasizing respect and equality, making it clear that such behavior would never be tolerated again. The public response was swift and overwhelmingly positive. Videos of the incident had already gone viral, and Richard's composed yet firm stance earned him widespread admiration. People praised his handling of the situation, calling him a role model for standing up against bias. For Richard, life moved on. When asked about the incident in interviews, he kept his message simple. "All I want is for every person to feel respected, regardless of their beliefs." His story became a symbol of change, not just for the bank, but for how businesses handle prejudice. And for Richard, his red cap remained more than a political statement. It was a testament to staying true to his values, no matter the opposition. The bank, now hailed as a leader in workplace reform, became a beacon of professionalism in California. It was a reminder that even in the face of bias, fairness, and respect could lead to meaningful change. What would you have done in Richard's place? Have you or someone you know faced a similar situation? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like if this story resonated with you. Let's talk about how we can stand up against prejudice and create a more respectful world. This story was shared to shed light on real issues and inspire positive change. Your opinion matters. Let's make a difference together. Just as the security guards were about to nudge Richard out the door, the sharp click of leather shoes echoed across the marble floor. Heads turned, and the air in the lobby seemed to pause. Striding in with the confidence of a man who owned the place because, well, he practically did, was James Albright, the 60-year-old bank director. His tailored suit was a masterpiece of fabric, and his presence was enough to make everyone in the room stand a little straighter. The moment James spotted Richard, his face lit up with recognition, and a wide, welcoming smile spread across his face. "Oh, there you are, our main shareholder," he boomed, his voice cutting through the hushed murmurs like a spotlight in a dark theater. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The guards froze mid-step, their grip on Richard loosening as they exchanged panicked glances. The clients who had been recording the scene widened their eyes, their phones still held up. And Eric Carter? He was standing in the doorway of his office, his face draining of color, faster than a melting popsicle on a summer day. "Main shareholder," Eric stammered, his usual smirk replaced by a look of sheer disbelief. "Yes, Eric," James said, with a pointed edge in his tone. "Richard Hansen, the man whose investments keep this branch and your paycheck very much afloat." Richard calmly adjusted his Make America Great Again cap, the brim catching the light just enough to emphasize the bold lettering. He turned to Eric, locking eyes with him, and delivered his words with the precision of a scalpel. "Yes, that's me. And it seems like someone here has been treating me with, let's say, less than professional respect." James's welcoming smile disappeared, replaced by a stern frown. His sharp eyes scanned the room like a detective piecing together a crime scene. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice low and measured, though the edge of authority was unmistakable. Before Richard could respond, the lobby erupted. Clients who had been silent observers moments ago began speaking up, eager to fill in the gaps. "He called him a fraud," one woman said, her voice tinged with indignation, "and told the guards to kick him out," another added. "I got the whole thing on video," a man piped up, waving his phone. "It's already online." James's expression darkened. He looked at Eric, who was now visibly sweating, his polished composure in tatters. "Eric," James said, his tone as cold as an Arctic wind, "is this true?" Eric opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked like a fish gasping for air, searching for an excuse, a lifeline, anything. Richard, ever the picture of calm, raised a hand to signal that he wanted to speak. "James," he said, his voice steady and composed, "let's not jump to conclusions just yet. Why don't we move this to the conference room? I think it's best we address this properly." James nodded, his professional instincts kicking in. "Agreed. Everyone involved, follow me," he commanded, his tone leaving no room for debate. The group moved to the sleek conference room, its glass walls providing an almost cinematic view of the bustling bank. Richard sat at the head of the table, his cap still firmly in place, a quiet reminder of the controversy at hand. James took a seat beside him, while Eric slumped into a chair across from them, looking like a man walking to his own trial. Meanwhile, back in the lobby, clients were still buzzing about the drama. The videos they had taken were already making their way online, accompanied by captions like, "Bank manager disrespects, billionaire MAGA supporter, instant karma incoming." Within minutes, the clips started gaining traction. Comments flooded in, with most users expressing outrage at Eric's behavior and applauding Richard's composure. In the conference room, James broke the silence. "Richard, I need to understand everything that happened. And Eric," he turned to the manager, his tone sharp as steel, "you'd better have a good explanation, or we're going to have a very serious problem." Eric swallowed hard, his carefully curated facade crumbling under the weight of the moment. Richard leaned back in his chair, his calm demeanor contrasting sharply with the tension in the room. "Well," Richard began, his voice steady but pointed, "let's start from the beginning, shall we?" Outside, the world was already tuning in, but inside that conference room, the real reckoning was just beginning. Getting kicked out of a bank, where your money literally pays their salaries, is one level of drama. But when the person kicking you out realizes who you really are and loses everything, that's a real plot twist. This isn't a story about forgiveness. It's about how one decision can change everything. Let's start from the beginning. It was one of those golden afternoons in downtown Los Angeles, where the sunlight bounced off glass skyscrapers and the streets buzzed with activity. Richard Hansen, 52 years old, and every bit the definition of composed, walked confidently into one of the city's most prestigious bank branches. Dressed in a sharp tailored suit and topped off with his unmistakable red "Make America Great Again" cap, he was a man who never shied away from standing out or standing up for what he believed in. Richard wasn't just some regular guy off the street. He was a billionaire investor who had carved his empire in renewable energy long before it was trendy. Despite his wealth, he kept things low-key. No entourage, no flashy watches, just that bright red cap, his silent declaration of belief in a better America. That hat had seen its share of sneers and side eyes, especially in California, a state where wearing it was practically an invitation for a heated debate. But Richard, he couldn't care less. As he stepped into the bank's marble-floored lobby, the atmosphere shifted, conversations hushed, heads turned, and more than a few pairs of eyes fixated on the bold lettering across his hat. A couple of whispers floated through the air, along with muffled chuckles. Richard caught a smirk here and there, but didn't flinch. He'd grown used to the theatrics. Walking up to the reception desk, he flashed his calm, signature smile. "Good afternoon," he said to the receptionist, a young man who seemed unsure whether to look at Richard or the hat. "Richard Hansen. I have an appointment with Eric Carter." The receptionist nodded quickly, his voice nearly cracking. "Yes, Mr. Hansen. Mr. Carter will see you now. Please follow me." Richard followed the young man through the bustling bank. Glass walls and sleek furniture framed an environment that screamed exclusivity. This wasn't just a bank. It was a fortress of California's financial elite. Soon Richard found himself face to face with Eric Carter, the branch's lead manager. Eric was everything you'd expect from someone who had climbed the corporate ladder in this part of the world. Mid-30s, sharply dressed, and radiating an air of self-importance. His eyes landed on Richard, then his hat. Instantly, his carefully composed expression gave way to a disdainful smirk. "Well, well," Eric said, leaning back in his chair. "What do we have here? A Make America Great Again supporter in our asterisk bank. Didn't think I'd see the day." Richard, unfazed, met Eric's gaze with steady calmness. "I wasn't aware my choice of hat was relevant to this meeting," he replied with a polite edge. But Eric wasn't done. He scoffed, leaning forward as if to emphasize his next point. "You know, this is a progressive bank. We don't usually cater to people like you." Richard's eyebrows rose slightly, but his voice stayed even. "I'm here to finalize a deal. Perhaps we could get to business." Eric, clearly enjoying his moment, leaned back again and folded his arms. "Oh, I don't think so. You're not exactly what we'd call our asterisk target clientele. In fact," he snapped his fingers, and 2 security guards appeared at the door. "Gentlemen, this man has no business being here. Escort him out." The guards moved toward Richard, and the room fell silent. A few other clients who had been discreetly watching the exchange began recording the scene on their phones. The guards grabbed Richard by the arms, but he didn't resist. His face remained calm, his posture dignified. "You might want to reconsider this," he said, his voice low but firm. Eric smirked again, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Oh, trust me. I've made my decision." As Richard was led toward the exit, murmurs filled the room. The tension was palpable. One woman whispered to her friend, "Isn't that Richard Hansen, the investor?" Another client muttered, "Why would they treat someone like him this way?" Richard glanced back over his shoulder, his eyes meeting Eric's for a brief moment. "You'll regret this," he said simply. And with that, the glass doors closed behind him, leaving the bank buzzing with speculation and an uncomfortable air of judgment lingering over its marble floors.